Check raising. It is one of the most powerful things you can do in a poker game, and yet it is very underutilized. Today we're going to be talking about what it is, why you want to be using it, how to use it, and then I'll even give you an example so you can see it in play. First, let's talk about what it is. A check raise is going to occur whenever we are out of position. The action is on us. We choose to check. We allow our opponent to bet, and then we're going to put in a raise afterwards. Basically,
it's a trap!
We're going to set the trap and then spring the trap and try to catch the opponent in it. Okay, but if we check with a good hand to an opponent, won't they just be able to check back and we won't get value? Yes. Okay, it seems you've bested me at logic, and therefore the video is over. Oh wait, but there's more. So why would a check raise be such a valuable tool? Let's talk about it, starting with point number one. Whenever you're playing a hand out of position in poker, it's important to remember that when you check, you're doing your best to level the playing field. You're giving your opponent a chance to act before you do, and they can show you their interest in the pot. Yes, you've checked ahead of time, but now you're going to allow them to either bet or check, which tells you at least something about their hand strength. Point number two is that check raising provides protection for our range. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. Let's say you're playing at a game and an opponent always bets when they have a strong hand and always checks to you out of position when they have a weak hand. What are you going to do? Well, pretty logically, you're just going to bet with almost every hand you hold whenever they check to you because they're telling you their hand is not strong and is not going to hold up well to pressure. Now imagine that same scenario, but this time they check to you, you put your bet in to steal their money, right? Because they've just been giving it away all night, and all of a sudden they put in a check raise. When they're check raising you after they've just been checking to you all night, you got to be really concerned. The reason this protection matters so much is because we're going to have a lot of hands that want to check and want to keep the pot small out of position. This means that the overall range that we're playing is going to get attacked less frequently, and when it gets attacked less frequently, we are going to realize more equity out of position. Point number three is that playing this way allows greater polarization. Now, polarization means that you are going to be less predictable, harder to play against, and you're going to cause your opponents to make more mistakes. A polarized range is going to contain some of your absolute strongest hands, including like your full houses and flushes, and it's going to contain some of your weakest hands, like a gut shot, like a small gut shot straight. And so when you play, you're going to mostly be doing this with your premium hands, but you're going to mix in some bluffs as well. And what this does is it makes it basically impossible, if you balance correctly, for an opponent to make a right decision against you. If they are calling too frequently, they're going to be paying you off too often. If they're folding too often to all of your value, they're going to be folding to hands that they have absolutely crushed. And so they have to find a mixed strategy of calling and folding. I'm not going to go into how to perfectly balance those on this video. That's a complex topic and would take a lot of time. But just know that as you learn to balance your bluffs with your value hands, you're going to create a miserable spot for your opponent. The more difficult positions you can put your opponent in, the more likely they are to make mistakes. The beauty of causing them to make mistakes and putting them in hard positions is that they are more likely to send their chips across the table to you, and that is what we're looking for.
Green light, let's get it. I'm the future, I'm in it. Check score, I'm winning. Green light, let's get it. I just win.
Point number four, check raising allows you to get value from hands that would not call you, but are interested in bluffing and stealing the pot. As a quick example, let's say that you flop a full house and you check to your opponent. Now maybe with two like middling Broadway cards on a paired board that doesn't have anything, they're probably just going to fold if you bet. However, if you check to them, they may think, hey, if they haven't hit this board and don't want to bet it here, I might be able to steal. And when you check raise, they're not going to call you necessarily, but you still got more value than if you had tried to bet. In addition to all this, when people see you check raising and you don't always have it, and they see you show down a bluff, occasionally they're going to get a little bit out of line, and they're going to go for it with hands that they probably shouldn't be going for it with because they've seen you get out of line. So occasionally this pot's going to get super bloated, and you just get to turn over the nuggets and scoop all their chips. Point number five, and this is probably the most important thing you can take from this video, you're going to add a ton of equity to hands that have very little equity when they flop. So if you were just to try to get to showdown by going check call the whole way, you're unlikely to win with these hands. As an example, let's go to this hand where we've arrived on the turn with 5-4 of hearts on 8-7 jack deuce. No, this is not a good hand. It's not a strong hand. It's one of the weakest ones we can possibly have in our range, and we can never really call a bet. If our opponent bets say half pot here, we only have 4 cards that are going to improve. So we have maybe 8% to improve. 5-4 of hearts has about 15-16% equity against a opening range. So let's say you called in the big blind and this is where you got to the flop. Well, right now all we have is a gut shot to the low side of a straight. Our opponent, however, has a lot of hands that are beating us, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily have a super strong hand. It just means that they are ahead with their equities. This hand can benefit by running a bluff on this turn if the situation is correct. So maybe we check on the flop and it goes check, check. We get to the turn and we check and our opponent puts out a small bet. This might be a great spot to check raise because it gives us now 2 modes that we can win in. By taking this line now, we've introduced a new win condition, which is our opponent can fold his cards. If all we do is check call, we never introduce that aspect of the game, and so we have no ability, we have no fold equity. By introducing fold equity, we actually increase the likelihood that this hand is going to win, because occasionally our opponent is just going to fold right here. Occasionally they're going to call, and very rarely, but it will happen, sometimes we're still going to make the straight by the river. Disclaimer, don't get drunk with power here and just start doing this all the time, or you can actually change the scenario to one that's not profitable for you. Don't allow your range to become composed of too much trash just because it's a neat play and it worked once. You do still need to mostly focus in on check raising with monster hands and then mixing in, sprinkling in some of the lighter stuff that's not as good in your range to balance that out, to incentivize them to call. If you make it an even split, you're not doing yourself any favors. You need to have more strong hands in your range than you do weak hands in your range when you're taking this line. So don't get drunk with power. It's easy to do when you see this play work, but the more you do it, the more people will catch on and start to play back at you. So make sure you maintain a balance as you're doing this. Now that you have a better idea of what this is, let's see it in action. This is a hand I recently played on Poker Bros, just playing some Hold'em at the 20-cent, 40-cent stake. Okay, so on this hand, I end up raising ace-3 suited from what is essentially the low jack. I'm in early position, but we're 6-handed, and I make it $1.80. I get 3 callers, which is not what I'm looking for. We go to this flop where I flop about as much equity as I can possibly flop without having it. So I have the flush draw, the nut flush draw, I have the straight draw, I have the overcard. I'm feeling really good about where my hand's at. It checks around to the button who bets $3.90. And now this is a spot where you can play this multiple ways. I can check this hand. I can call this hand right here, and I can allow my other opponent to come in, or I can go for the raise. I have both options available to me. The reason I like the check raise here, multiple things. I do potentially win the hand right now, which I'm happy to do. I have a ton of equity if they do call, so I'm fine with them calling. I'm also fine with winning. What I don't want to happen is I don't really want this other opponent in there. If I make the nuts, I'm going to feel great about it. But by pushing him out, I'm probably live with my ace still. So I'm giving myself a higher likelihood that my ace is going to be good. There aren't a bunch of aces that my opponent has here that make sense, other than maybe ace-7. So if he has like ace-7 suited, of which there are 3 combos, then maybe he's taking this line. More often than not, my ace is actually going to be good if it shows up, if I can push the other player out and make sure he doesn't have an ace also. So I go for the check raise line here. I'm trying to push out the player in between us in the cutoff, and I'm happy to take the hand down now. If I get a call, then I'm going to continue to be aggressive on basically every turn card. And if I get a raise, I'm content to go ahead and continue putting the money in because I have so much equity here. I'm really not afraid of anything. So let's go ahead and see how this plays out. I go ahead and raise it up to $9.30. The cutoff is going to fold, and the button is going to make the call. On the turn, we just hit gin, so it gets really easy, right? We have the straight. Now, it's possible that he's holding 6-8 for a straight, 3-6 for a straight. Those are super unlikely hands. Very unlikely he's going to be betting them, even if he has them. And so even if he does, let's say he's holding 6-8 here, I still have a redraw to the nuts, and so I'm really not worried about this spot either. Seeing how I've hit the straight now, there are sets that make sense. There are overpairs that make sense. I'm going to go for the bet. We end up getting all the money in when I bet, and he decides to raise me, so he probably has a real hand. I think he's going to have a lot of sets. I think he'll have some overpairs, some 2 pairs, Occasionally he's going to have a weird straight, but I think it's very unlikely. And even if he does have the straight, I'm still drawing to the nuts with the ace high flush draw. So we're putting all the chips in. Let's see where we're at.
Green light, let's get it. I just win.
So $116 pot, not a guarantee that we were going to get all the money in if I took a more passive line, but you can see how by going for this and being really aggressive early, all the chips end up going in and we're able to scoop a huge pot here when we make this straight. If you want to join me on Poker Bros and put your newly found check raising skills to the test, it is a great way to play around at a low price and practice your game, practice some spots. I encourage you to get in there. Come take some of my money. You know that I'll be bluffing with a check raise a fair amount in there, so see if you can come pick me off. The information is in the description below. Come and join the club and play some cards with me. Also, in addition to that, we have some new products in the store. I'm going to show those to you now. First one here is the Ace of Spades logo. Beautiful on that shirt. You can find it on a coffee mug as well if that's what you prefer. And then my personal favorite right now in the store, this one that we just added. This is, on this channel, we play Patient and Dangerous. So this is the tight, aggressive, old man coffee style shirt. We are patient, we are dangerous. So check those out. You can find the store link down there in the description as well. When you decide you're going to grab something from the store, use the code CheckRaise for watching this video. CheckRaise, no space, and you're going to get 10% off your order as a thank you for supporting this channel. Thanks for being here. Hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you again next time.
Doing 80 to the house, then I hit it to the sky, change haters on a tirade, talking to the grip in the face, be still, let that hate stuff fade. We all want the same, we all want